The Compliance Perspectives podcast is sponsored by Case IQ, a global provider of whistleblowing case management and compliance solutions. Learn more at caseiq.com. Welcome to the Compliance Perspectives podcast. I'm Adam Turteltaub from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics in Healthcare Compliance Association. Joining us today from Dallas is Joey Seeber. Joey is CEO of Level Legal, and today we're going to be talking about eDiscovery and the role of compliance in it. Joey, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. You see a troubling shortfall and disconnect between compliance teams and the whole eDiscovery process. How so?
Well, compliance teams, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to join you. Yeah, compliance teams don't always do a great job of communicating with the rest of the business and vice versa. So legal and IT, for instance, sometimes are not communicating with each other or with the compliance teams. I mean, as an example, legal department might assume something's included in compliance when it isn't. IT might assume that the compliance department knows about all the tools that they use when they may not. Departments may be getting their own platforms or tools, and the compliance group doesn't know about it. This happens a lot with the newer type of apps like Slack and Signal, Airtable, things like that. So I think it comes down to communication, a communication issue, which is understandable, particularly in fast-growing companies.
Well, and so many challenges always get back to that whole communications issue. Now, can you give us some examples of how the problem occurs and what some of the consequences are?
Well, from our perspective, in legal, lawyers often don't find out about the problem until there's an issue or a dispute, or there's been a problem. For instance, with data and its retention or retention period. Sometimes data is set to be automatically deleted after a certain period of time, or apps like Signal do it as a matter of course. And so companies may be unknowingly failing to preserve and open themselves up to sanctions or other penalties for missing a production deadline or even spoliation arguments. So it can happen unwittingly sometimes. Different platforms or tools may, as I mentioned, Signal retires data at a given period, but that may not be in compliance with a policy of the company. So often this comes up when there's a dispute, or when there's litigation or an investigation, or maybe even in a approval of a transaction.
So let's focus on how we get past this problem. How can compliance teams work more closely with legal and others when it comes to eDiscovery?
Yeah, look, the best practice is that the stakeholders would be on a team, and that the compliance team is made up of those stakeholders in the company. Legal, IT, business operations should all be included. With business operations sometimes is a key component that may be missing. And then, again, we talk about communications. The compliance team should regularly talk with those in business ops, and those who are closest to the tools or the data that is being used. Understand what they're doing, what tools they're using, what may have been added. Again, a communication issue with all stakeholders at the table. That's really the best way. The other thing is to keep compliance policies and documentation updated as much as possible. It's not uncommon, particularly again in newer or fast-growing organizations. It's not uncommon to see compliance documents that may be 4 or 5 years old. Oftentimes, somebody has made somebody create a compliance document and we check the box, okay, that's been done. But oftentimes, um, the company may have added applications or tools that didn't exist at the time the documents were created. So they're oftentimes not updated. So that's a best practice.
And you raise a good point there, is that there's so many new ways for people to communicate. It's often hard to make sure that your compliance practices are keeping up with whatever the new sort of flavor of the month is when it comes to how people want to communicate with each other. So companies often go looking at eDiscovery solutions as ways to help manage this, or also technology for tracking what's being said on all these platforms. What are the right questions to be asking about these solutions?
I think when we think about asking the right questions of eDiscovery solutions or eDiscovery providers, we have to ask questions around those things that we just talked about. You want to understand how they interact with all of the latest applications and tools that the various business units are using. Are they able to extract that data? Are they able to uh, optimize that data for the particular use? How do they deal with issues when there may be data that's not easily available? Um, do they understand those problems and those solutions? Um, what is their experience with those problems, and how have they solved or dealt with them in the past? Data is more and more complex all the time because it resides in the nooks and crannies of the organization that oftentimes is not readily apparent. I think another question to ask is, when you run into an issue, and you will, in an organization of any size, then how do you deal with it in a custom way? Can you write a custom script to solve a more complex data problem, particularly when there's a deadline? Um, and how can you leverage that across uh, customers or within that particular customer?
Well, Joey, thanks for sharing these insights with us. I mean, I think it's going to be an ongoing sort of journey of discovery when it comes to e-discovery, as so many platforms emerge and, as you note, have different retention schedules built into them, and companies try and consolidate those things into a more coherent mass. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I'm Adam Turteltaub from SCCE and HCCA. I hope we're able to expand your compliance perspective.